The work of the just is unto life, but the fruit of the wicked unto sin. The way of life to him that observeth correction, but that forsaketh reproofs goes astray. That's today's daily wisdom. What God's saying here is the guy that does the right thing is going to reap good fruit. But the guy with bad fruit, which ultimately is a result of your root, what did Christ say? It's from a man's heart that he speaks truth. Then it says the way of life is he that observes correction, right? So to have a better life, observe correction, make course corrections, be willing to change your environment. But the guy that forsakes correction will go astray. And that's something I want to talk about today. I want to talk about environment. I want to talk about soil, root, which leads to fruit. But it all comes down to your environment. You will know a man by his fruit, right? I once said this before in a previous episode. Show me a man's results, and I will show you what he values. The only way to change the fruit of our lives is to change the root of our lives, right? The root is who we are. It's from out of a man's heart, his mouth speaks. If you don't know this about me, I dropped out of high school when I was 17 years old because I thought I knew everything. Obviously, I was completely wrong. You see, this was back in 96, 97. My parents got divorced. My mom needed help, which led me to working full-time, right? I started working at my first job. I started working at Golden Corral. I was a dishwasher, 16 years old. Just working part-time. I'd only work the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But then when I turned 17, my stepfather, my mother, my parents got divorced. And my mom needed help with bills, making ends meet. And so I ended up working full-time so I could help her. And, as an idiot teenager, you start making money. You think you're big. You think you're big shot. I figured, hey, because I'm so smart, I figured, hey, you know what? Like, I'm already paying bills now. I might as well just get my own place. So the smart answer to me at that time was drop out of high school. And as a result of that, I never got a full education. So I've always had these feelings that like I'm a dumb person. I feel like I'm dumb at a lot of times. I'm not a good writer. I've just always felt I can't even think of the word. Unworthy, I guess. Not smart. My vocabulary struggled. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I want to say I have a learning disability. I love reading books. So I started getting in. I've never been a big reader, but I started reading books around 2016. But man, when I read books, I just can't comprehend a lot of what I'm reading. A lot of the stuff is just way over my head. And so literally when I read, I have to write almost everything down that I'm reading, man. If you see my books that I read, my Bible, everything, tons of just sticky notes everywhere. Like I'll read something and I have to just sit there and contemplate, like, what the heck does this mean? I've got to go to the dictionary and I got to look up words. Like, just my vocabulary has never been good. Ironically, my entire business has been built on my ability to write. It's funny how, God has a sense of humor. But I think in life, our weaknesses, we're confronted with those weaknesses, and opportunities are presented to ourselves. So I feel like whatever your weakness is, God is going to confront you with that, with an opportunity to grow through that, right? I believe it was Father Calloway that said, the way that we sin is the way that we'll be purified, right? And Robert Bly says, it's the wound where you're wounded that's your gift to the world, right? And so I feel like the places where, like for me, where I felt like I'm dumb and I'm not articulate and I have to really make a conscious effort to comprehend what I'm reading, and like God confronts you with that, with an opportunity to grow. Eventually I did go back to school. I got my GED, finished. That was about it. That's my education, GED. Good enough diploma, as they say. But as a result of that, I always doubted myself. I've always doubted myself when I started creating content online, when I started creating these videos, when I started writing my blog, when I started building my email list. Everything that I share with you today, I've always felt like I'm not a good speaker. I'm not a good writer. Who would want to listen to me? Ultimately, these are all stories, right? Stories as a result of my life experience. Stories as a result of my environment, the environment that I chose to put myself in, dropping out of high school, etc., etc. Eventually jiu-jitsu found me. I never say I found jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu found me. Because within jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu is an environment of learning. If you want to get better in life, if you want to get stronger on the mat and off the mat, you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, cultivate and or surround yourself by an environment focused on learning. Because to learn, you have to practice, right? For me to freaking learn how to read these books, I got to show up and read them every day, take notes, practice, study. Crazy. I hated study. I hated reading. I hated study. It's just, I don't know. I've always hated study. And ironically, I would go to these, I started helping at these men's retreats with our parish. And it was called True Presence Retreat. And in these retreats, there's 7 key talks around faith and community. But the one key talk it's like the talk. It's the talk that everybody remembers. It's the study talk. And usually that's like the intellectual talk of like the weekend. And many of the guys that would give these talks, man, some of these guys are scholars, professors of theology, just very intellectual men. And I believe it was 2017, maybe 2016. I was serving on team, and the director of the retreat that we're prepping, because we prep for 10 weeks before this event kicks off. And so every week we're meeting. And about 5 or 6 weeks in, I get a phone call from him, and he's like, "Hey, man," he goes, "the guy that was supposed to give our study talk, something came up. He's not going to make the retreat." So I prayed about it, and God asked me to ask you to do the study talk. Dude, I was just like, oh, I mean, you imagine the unworthiness and everything that came up around that, me feeling dumb, and just everything around that coming up. And I was like, man, I don't know, I got to think about it. He's like, well, let me know. I thought about it really hard that whole day, called him back. It's like, all right, man, I'll do it. You don't have to change to do the things that you want in life. Doing the uncomfortable things will change you, right? St. Jerome said, no, it was St. Bernard. St. Bernard said, about the Blessed Virgin Mary, St. Bernard said, you don't have to change to love Our Lady. Loving Our Lady will change you, right? I'm a selfish person. Like family time and all that stuff doesn't come easy to me. It's not something that I naturally want to do. I don't like being around a lot of crowds. I'm not a social person. But I know that I need to operate in those spaces, So I do them whether I like them or not. And by doing them, though, it will change me. It has changed me. And so God will present you with these things. And so I'm like, you know what? This is my opportunity to study and to elevate my intellect. It's just so, man, I had like 4 weeks, because, we're week 6, we're 10 weeks in, and then we kick off. I had 4 weeks to get ready. And I don't even know how I did it, but I ended up giving, not tooting my horn here, but just based on the guys, I mean, it stood its ground on what it was supposed to be, the talk of the weekend. You know, I was really proud of that talk, but looking back, I was like, man, look at that. A guy that hated study, a guy that feels unworthy, a guy that feels dumb, that he's not smart, he's not a good writer, not a good presenter. Here I am, God having me to lead this study talk. And so ultimately, again, these are all stories, the stories that we tell ourselves, right? The stories that we tell, who said that? I don't even know who said this. The stories we tell ourselves about our lives become the stories of our lives. You know, in 2022, I've made it my mission to acquire wisdom. But before I can acquire wisdom, I need to acquire knowledge and pray that God gives me understanding, because understanding comes from God. And through that understanding of that knowledge, putting that knowledge and understanding into action. And one of those quests for knowledge and wisdom was for me to start reading the daily proverb every day. That's usually how I open up some of these episodes now. And, you know, I've always never, like I've shared this before, I never really felt like God speaks to me. And you know, because you know how the saying goes, like, ask and thou shalt receive, right? But one day, in the middle of one of my self-doubt episodes, I was reading the daily wisdom, or one of the daily readings. I believe it was a Sunday reading. And God spoke to me through His word. You know, so here's what I've learned. Here's kind of how it works is, you know, when we pray, we speak to God. We communicate to Him through our prayers, right? But when we read His word, God communicates to us. And I remember now, it was the second reading during the 8th Sunday in Ordinary Time where St. Paul said in his first letter to the Corinthians, he said, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast and unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." You know, because you know, these videos, you know, if you're new to this channel, you know, they've been pretty spiritual religious, you know, for some time now, and I was very nervous about that. Again, all my unworthiness, and I don't know if I can, you know, I'm not a theologian, you know, do people even want to hear this, right? And so these were like the self-doubt thoughts that I was having. And then I came across this, you know, 1 Corinthians during that reading, and I was like, boom, that's all I needed to hear. Because I just felt like it was something that God had wanted me to share. Because the people that listen to this or find value in this, this might be the closest thing you ever have when it comes to hearing the Word of God and the truth of the gospel. And the moment I started sharing this stuff, sure enough, my self-doubt started creeping in, telling myself, who would want to hear that? I'm no scholar. I'm no theologian. I'm a high school dropout. Like, these things started creeping in. And then that's when God spoke to me in that second reading, basically telling me it doesn't matter. As long as I'm abounding in His work, just know that my labor is not in vain. You know, and we see that in the first chapter of Jeremiah, where God tells Jeremiah, you know, hey, look, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Think about that. That is mind-blowing. Which means God willed, like for you, for me, God willed each of us into existence. He chose and willed it for you and I to exist. Did you know that it's, I believe, last statistic I saw on this, it's 1 in 400 trillion. Those are the odds of you and I being born. 1 in 400 children. Of all of the people throughout history that would need to come together for you to be born. God willed you to be born. You're not an accident. God knew us before He formed us in the womb. He said, before you were born, I dedicated you a prophet to the nations, and I appointed you. Right? So we are priest, prophet, and king by virtue of our baptism. Right? And sure enough, as soon as God tells Jeremiah this, how does he respond? Right? God has presented Jeremiah with his mission, and Jeremiah says, like, God, like, I know not how to speak. I'm too young. Like, I'm just a kid. Like, I'm not worthy to do this. Like, all the self-doubt. And so seeing that piece of scripture let me know that I'm in good company. Like, if a man who it was sanctified in his mother's womb struggles with self-doubt, struggles with feeling like worthy and not being good enough to spread God's message, then man, I'm in good company. And then what does God tell Jeremiah? He says, look, don't say that I'm just a child. You will go, and I'm going to send you forth. And you're going to do whatever it is that I command you. And you're going to speak that. He said, be not afraid at their presence, for I am with you to deliver you, said the Lord. And the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, behold, I have given my words into thy mouth. I have set thee this day over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root up and to pull down and to waste and to destroy and to build and to plant. You see, the aha moment that I had, these feelings of unworthy and like I'm not smart, like I don't have to worry about that, because if I can take God here at his word, you know, that was my epiphany. That was my mindset shift. I don't have to worry anymore about what I'm going to say in these videos. I don't have to worry anymore about what I'm going to say when I'm writing my emails and creating my blog posts. Like, I don't have to worry about any of that anymore, because God will give me the exact words I need to say when it's time to say them. You see, you and I are Jeremiah. God has put his words in our mouths. We even see this in the gospel where Jesus is commanding his apostles, right? So for context, like Jesus is warning his apostles, you know, of the coming persecutions. Like, hey man, these people are going to come after you because of me. And he tells them, but when they shall deliver you up, take no thought of how or what to speak, for it shall be given to you in that exact moment of what to speak. For it's not you that speak, but the Spirit of your Father that speaks in you. Right? So the same goes for us today. We will be persecuted because of Christ, right? Because we follow him. And when that time comes, when it comes time to defend ourselves, rest assured God will give us the exact words we need to plead our case. But if you look at this from the perspective of like everyday life, if you have a big meeting, if you have a big presentation coming up, like, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it, because God will give you the exact words you need at the exact hour that you need them, when and how to say them. And if you plan accordingly and you prepare yourself, you'll reap good fruit. We see this in the gospel again. Jesus telling the parable about the reaper and the sower, right? He says, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, where it had little soil. It sprang up, and at once, because the soil was not deep, and when the sun arose, it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it out. But some seed fell on rich soil and produced good fruit, 160 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. You see, and this all comes down to our environment. So what Christ is saying here is like some fell on rich soil. So the soil is your environment. What environment are you putting yourself in? Are you surrounding yourself by in an environment of learning? Are you cultivating an environment of learning? Because that environment, that is your soil. Good soil produces good fruit. Good soil produces good root. Good root produces good fruit. If you're not happy with the fruit of your life, whatever that is, if you're not attaining the strength goals that you set for yourself, if you're not attaining the weight loss goals that you set for yourself, if you're not getting better at jiu-jitsu, you're not happy with the results you're seeing on the mat, if you're not happy with that fruit, today we're taught that we can just sit here and complain about the fruit, complain about the results, like, oh, I'm doing these things, but yet I'm not getting the results. If we don't we're conditioned now to just blame that and everything will change, when that's not the case. If you're not happy with the fruit that you're producing, You need to change the root. And the only way to change the root is to change the soil, which is your environment. What did Jim Rohn say? You're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Your environment builds the root, and the root builds your fruit. If the fruit's not good, the root's not good. And if the soil that you plant your seeds in aren't good, you need to change that soil. You need to change that environment. So if you want to get stronger for jiu-jitsu, if you want to lose the weight, if you want to become a better person, change your environment. That's it, man. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.